Hello ladies and gentlemen, Average Tea Drinker here, and we are back with another tips and tricks video. Regarding this series, I've asked a few times if you prefer short or long. That's what she said. And I thought of a happy middle ground. So I'm going to start timestamping each tip on screen. So once I finish speaking regarding one tip, just check the top of the screen and you'll see when the next one is. But if you watch all the way through, you're even more of a legend.
Quite often, your tank will trigger the Shrieking Whelps in this first room, which is going to summon the Crystal Furies. With these Crystal Furies, you'll want to stop their cast of Piercing Shards as much as you can, which is a frontal on the tank, so always be wary of their positioning. It puts a pretty nasty stacking debuff on them, so like I said, try and interrupt it as much as you can. Next are the Lashes, which cast Mystic Vapors. You'll want to kick all CC to stop these because it puts a dot which stacks on everyone else in the party, so you really want to stop these casts. It is a magic debuff, so if you have a priest in the party they can master spell it, or if you're a dwarf like myself you can dispel like that. Lastly, the Arcane Tender have a cast called Erratic Growth which needs to be kicked, otherwise you're going to get stunned for 6 seconds. The Tender also casts Wild Eruption, which are puddles on the floor. These hit incredibly hard when you walk on them, so I would suggest to walk around them rather than walking over them, otherwise you're going to take quite a lot of damage. With Angry Purple Lamor, there are 2 abilities to be wary of. First being Explosive Brand, which you'll want to try overlap with as many flowers as you possibly can without overlapping someone else's circle, because if you do, you're both dead. If you press Astral Shift if you're playing Shaman, just before it explodes, so like 0.2, 0.1 seconds, you can actually overlap that defensive with the next ability, Consuming Stomp, which is where you will ideally want a defensive for every time it casts. For extra damage tips, try and line up your P-Wave alongside the ad spawns as you'll generate a lot of funnel damage into the boss. Beware of the ads when they die as they drop a puddle which explodes. Just before you get into the ring, you have the Thrasher here, which is also at the start of the dungeon. It does a massive circle around it called Crystalline Rupture. This does pretty one-shot damage basically, so don't stand on it. If you have a Paladin who has freedom, they can put this on you to ignore the mechanic, but most likely just always try run out. We pulled the 2 elementals here just before you fly over to the ring area. You also will be dealing with them in the ring area, so they have a cast called Waking Bane, which puts you into a little nap. Try to kick or CC this cast, and if you have a spare talent point, it could be worth taking Tremor Totem because it will stop the sleep. So if you don't really have good coordinated stops, it's definitely worth taking that. In the first ring here, you have 3 new mobs you're going to deal with. Dodge the very obvious in-your-face forbidden knowledge swirlies from the Curator. Next are the Keepers, which are going to cast Icy Bindings, and this is a high priority to stop with kicks or CC. Priest Master Spell works if it does go through alongside our Spirit Walk for us Shamans, and you can also use Dwarf Racial. Lastly are the Constructs, which cast a frontal called Arcane Bash on the tank, so just be wary of their positioning. For this room here, before the second boss, there are 3 things you kind of need to be watching out for. First being the lieutenants, who are going to cast Spell Frost Breath, which is a frontal on the tank. So if you like holding the tank's hand, you're going to have separation right now, or you're going to be vaporized. Next is the attendant's unstable power, which is going to put a swirly underneath anyone's feet within 25 yards, so make sure you have room to get out of this because you will be one shot. Lastly is to try stop the ice cutter by the guards, which is just going to shred your tank down. So unless you want to be meleeed because your tank has died, I suggest you use any sort of spare CC you have to stop these casts. For Azure Blade, there are quite a few dangerous mechanics to watch out for. First, the main thing to prioritize is the draconic images, which are going to spawn adds throughout the entire phase. These need to be killed as soon as possible. They have a cast called Illusionary Bolt, so kick this, CC this cast at all costs. Next is the fairly frequent Arcane Cleave, which is a frontal on the tank, so just hope the tank doesn't like darts and do a 180. There is another targeted frontal orb called Ancient Orb, funny enough, so dodge these big purple balls. For defensives, use them on each overwhelming energy as it pulses AoE until you kill the 4 adds in this phase. Try to maximize your primordial wave usage for the images in phase 1 and in the overwhelming energy phase for the adds. Last mobs now, you'll be dealing with the dungeon. You have the Jumpy Boys Hornswogs who have a leap called Null Stomp, so just watch out for the swirlies. These mobs can be CC'd, so if you get sick of all the moving around, just use Thundershock or Cap Totem. Next is the high priority target in this area, which is the Breaker. They're going to rotate 2 casts. First being the Shoulder Slam, which does a charge on a affected player and it has a circle around them. If you stand in this, you're going to get hit as well, so try to stay away from other people, and if you have it, just stand still. Next is the Bestial Roar, which is where you'll run to rotate your defensives. Sometimes you can get a pretty nasty combo of Shoulder Slam into Bestial Roar, and you're going to hit the deck before you know it, so make sure you either top yourself or you use a defensive. These 2 abilities by the Breaker can also be Stone Skin Totem because it is physical, so if you have a spare point, it's definitely worth using that. Third boss is fairly straightforward. Main mechanic you do well throughout the fight is Frost Bomb, so try to place these as tightly stacked with your teammates' patches without overlapping, and to the sides just to maximize as much free space for yourself on the platform. Next is Absolute Zero. Pay attention to the timer for this, as you can waste damage or pop your cooldowns as he flies away, so it's a complete waste. A cool trick you can use again regarding Astral Shift: if you press it just before the explosion, you'll actually overlap it with the next set of Frost Bombs to reduce their damage too. You'll ideally want to use defensives for Absolute Zero each time it cast, so you can use Earthfairy and Spirit Wolf and then just rotate Astral Shift on the other ones. Last mechanic is Icy Devastator. Use AG and Healing Surge to keep yourself topped, and stand still to not cleave anyone else.
For the last boss, it's all about the 3 crystal spawns. That is where you'll probably wipe, or if you do it correctly, you're going to time the key. The boss casts a frontal called Crystalline Roar at a random player as well, so it sidestepped that. It's quite a long wind up time, so you have plenty of time to move. Next are the Arcane Eruptions when the boss gets to 100 energy. Dodge the swirly explosions, and they're going to spawn little balls after the explosion, so don't play with the moving bubbles as you're going to take lethal damage. Every 25%, starting at 75%, the boss will spawn crystals around him. The one you should focus is the Hardened Crystal, as it pulses AoE until you break its shield. For these crystal spawns, this is where you'll want to rotate your defensives as well. You want to pop AG on one of them just to help the group keep topped, as it's heavy AoE damage coming out. Like I said, this is where you'll make or break on the boss. Depending on cooldown timings, normally you send your cooldowns on the first set at 75%, then if you have Bloodlust, you Bloodlust at 50%, and then you use your CDs again at 25%. Luckily for us, we have cooldowns going into each phase because we have short cooldowns. So make sure you try hold your primordial buff to break the shield on the hardened crystal. That do be the end. I hope the tips were tipping. Quickly mentioning this as I get a few comments in these videos regarding the UI and Plater. It's all available in the Discord for free. Just join and go to the My Interface channel and go get them. Good luck in the next Azure keys, and see you in the next video.